Hello, Dave. Welcome to fall.
Well, thank you. You're all dressed for it. I was so excited when you got on here this morning. I'm like, that is what it is feeling like outside right now.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's different from Utah weather, right? Where they've already had snow. So here it just feels a little cooler. So I thought today we'd put on some orange flannel, make it a little change.
No, that's perfect. I've got some blue flannel. I guess I should have put mine on. Maybe next week I'll have to wear my blue and gray flannel that I've got. But you got some pumpkin spice there, maybe hot chocolate, something to get you going there.
Not yet. I'm working on the hot chocolate for lunch. Well, I just want to welcome everyone to our show today. So grateful that you're with us today. Again, as always, we're here live every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time, and we are talking retirement. And we're here with Dave Hall, and Dave answers all the questions that come in. So regardless of what topic it is, from reverse mortgage to self-directed plans, Dave, all the way up to Medicare, Social Security, you're here to answer all those questions.
Yes, I am. Happy to answer whatever we can, give you the best information to help you get to a more safe and secure retirement.
And so we do this again every week to come on and take your questions. I also have a bundle of questions here from different webinars, from different feedback, and people that send in their questions. Dave, there's probably new people on here, but why again do we focus on answering these questions and getting through this and trying to help people get closer to retirement?
Because we realize people have a ton of questions when it comes to the retirement. And the more you get answered, it seems like the more that you have. Because retirement's not a simple process. Even though many people treat it that way, they spend very little time planning for their retirement. It's very complex when you get into the details of it. And the more you learn, the more you realize you don't understand. And the more you realize that you need to get a better understanding of. Now, that being said, hey, you don't have to spend your whole life just learning about retirement. That's something that I'll do. You don't have to worry about doing that yourself, but it is going to take you some hours to be able to get into the details and really figure out what you should be doing for yourself.
And we encourage you to let us know where you're watching from. We always love to see everyone from all over joining us, and submit your retirement question. So again, I have a bundle here we're going to go through, but if there's something on your mind, or Dave answers a question, you say, I'm interested in that in my own life, jump on and submit your question. We'll do our best to squeeze it in here as well. So Dave, if you're ready, I've got a whole bundle of questions from all over the place, and I want to get going.
Let's get started.
Okay, so let's get my first one here. Let's see. We're going to pull up Larry's question. And Larry said, I'm 60 years old with most retirement in an IRA. What life insurance would you recommend?
Larry, let's go back to a little bit. Let's step back before we just jump into the life insurance side of this. When we look at some of the issues that you're dealing with, is you've got a situation here where you've got a lot of tax deferred assets. Obviously, you've done what the old generation was doing and should have been done when tax rates were 70% and they were deferring into the tax rates we have today. But one, we've got to look at that bucket. We've got to figure out what transitions we can make. Do we have the money available to make those transitions? You're over 59 and a half, so you're not going to be subject to penalties if we make some transitions. But really, when we get to it, that we're going to want a policy that's going to do a couple of things for you. Number one, we want the tax-free growth and distribution. Pretty easy to get. But we also want to have a chronic illness rider, or what many people would call long-term care rider, that's going to allow you to take advantage of the death benefit for a long-term care event if that were to happen. So my recommendation would be to use an indexed universal life product, but you really need to look at your whole picture. I wouldn't just rush out and try to buy a policy based upon what I know here. I would want to better understand what money needs to be moved, what money do we have available, where's the best place to put this when we look at the future to allow you to get to the retirement you're trying to achieve.
And Dave, how do you know what company is going to work for us? So if I'm looking at this saying, Dave, I really need a good product. How do I even do this?
Well, we work with 50 different companies, CR, but when you look at it, these life insurance policies should meet certain criteria. We want them to be safe and productive. So what does that do? Well, that takes out all of the whole life policies out there because they're safe but not productive. That takes all the variable policies off the table because they're productive but not safe. We want low fees. That's something that when we look across the board, most insurance companies, if we structure them correctly, we can get there. But then we want tax-free and cost-free distribution. Well, many insurance companies, even some of the top ones, don't offer tax or cost-free distribution. So those 50 companies we work with, we may have whittled that down to 5 companies that are meeting these criteria. And then the last one's the no-fee chronic illness rider. But what we're doing is looking for those requirements. Once they're met, then we're figuring out which of those companies matches up best with the person that's looking for the insurance. But the industry itself pretty much whittles it down and what they offer, because if we follow the guidelines we need to have, a lot of those insurance policies are never going to qualify for what we're trying to accomplish here from an income stream. Now, if you were just wanting a life insurance policy for a death benefit, hey, these various 50 companies may be an option for you. But if you want income stream, you've got to meet the criteria, or you're going to lose a lot of money that you don't need to lose to either the government or those insurance companies.
Dave, let's jump over, and I'm going to go to a whole new direction. We're going to bring Zoe's question up. Would you suggest a Roth IRA right at the beginning of a career and sidestep the 401k altogether?
For most people, yes, because you can get money into that tax deferred account at any time. You've got 30 or 40 years. But for most people starting out in their career, their income's usually not in the highest brackets. Now, some people may be blessed to have that much income coming out of college or getting started. But when we look at the future and where you're going to be at, most people's income's pretty low going into those early years, where it can be a great opportunity to get it going. And number two, CR, that's going to grow tax-free for the rest of their lives. Now, if taxes don't go up, if they were to stay the same, then it really wouldn't matter. You'd end up with the exact same amount at the end of the day. But you look at someone in their 20s or 30s that thinks they're going to have a 37% maximum bracket in their 60s. I don't see it, CR. I don't see how there's any way, when we look at the debt and the obligations we have, that that's ever going to be reality as we look to the future.
Dave, what happens if I work at a company and they have a 401k, but there is no Roth option? What's my step to do to fix this?
Yeah, you need to take some time, go see your HR department and convince them that this is something they really need to do. Because unfortunately, if you're in this situation, you're going to end up wanting to go into your Roth IRA, but some people are going to have restrictions. You're not going to be able to put as much in. Maybe at that point too, a life insurance policy would be an option. But really what you want to do is get the company to change their plan to allow for this option, because it's not just helping you. If you look at the statistics, if you look at what's going on in our country, Roth accounts are helping everyone out there. We're seeing more conversions now than we've ever seen in the history of America, because people are realizing now's a great time to get money into these Roth accounts.
And Dave, I want to stay on the Roth train here, but I want to jump over. We've got Armando jumping on to say hello and happy hump day.
Hey, I am liking the picture there. It looks like he's out on a bike having a good time. So welcome, Armando. Glad to have you with us today.
Yeah, it's always great. We love those that are joining us and being part of the group here from Facebook and YouTube, again, live every Wednesday. Thank you for being here. And we love, again, your feedback and your questions as we continue to dive through here. And Dave, as promised, I have lots of different questions here, but let's jump back over to the Roth question that I have. So Laura is asking, what is the likelihood that they change Roth IRAs to be taxable?
Laura, this is one of the questions we get asked all the time. It's a very popular question because people have a concern that, wait, I do the right thing, I end up going and moving this money over, and then the government backtracks. And there have been situations where the government has backtracked on various things. But as we look at what's going on here, what we're seeing as we look to the future is they're trying to expand these products. So I don't see that they're trying to get rid of them. But even in the future, when we look at it, they've got 95% of the retirement assets. Right now, it's about $30 trillion. That over the next decade, probably going to be closer to 50 trillion, that they have the opportunity to take whatever percentage of those assets they want without any going back, because these are those tax deferred accounts they made no promises on. So I don't see that the government's going to go back on 5% of America and say, hey, you know what, we were just kidding. We're going to take all your money and leave the other 95% sitting there with the tax brackets they're in. I see them going in and saying, look, yeah, you know what, it's been 37%. We're going to 39.6. We're going to 42. We're going to 47. What are you going to do about it? That's we made you no promises. We told you that at some point in the future, you're going to pay taxes, and the days come.
And Dave, I think it's important that we address this particular topic, and I know we do it a lot, but people are getting lots of, I would say, false information out there because they're just trying to gather resources, and they come up with something like this, and then altogether they stop investing, or they stop because they're confused, or they've received the information and they just stop. And this is what we're trying to help why we do this show is to help people to understand that you need to take action.
Yeah, what's that quote? Paralysis by analysis. You hear once in a while out there, and that becomes somewhat of a problem. As the more people learn, they can get themselves to a point where they're afraid to take action. They're afraid that they're going to end up losing money. But there's so many different options out there that you can take advantage of. You've got to get the money out there. And if you're young, you need to understand you got a lot of years. That money can, even if the market drops, it's going to come back. We've got a lot of years for the market to come back. Now, if you're going to put all of your money into one asset and have unsystematic risk, yeah, you may lose all. If you're going to gamble on the next big IPO, think that that's going to take off and it never does, well, yeah, maybe you're going to lose all your money. But if you diversify out, should be in a good position as you look to the future and 10, 20 years out, 30 years out, whatever it may be for your retirement.
Great advice. Dave, let's pull up Andrea's question. I like this question. I wish I was Andrea, but if you inherit a large IRA, do you have to take it all out in 5 years, or is there a strategy to pre-inheritance to avoid this?
Wait, you mean people get large IRAs? I didn't get one when my parents passed away. I got a house that I got to share with 5 other people that wasn't worth very much. So Now, that being said, like you say, congratulations. I was grateful to have my parents that I had and the life that they gave me. Enjoyed the years that we were together. But when we look at this Secure Act 1.0, we're looking at Secure Act 2.0 now. When we look back at Secure Act, it changed these rules. So what you have is a 10-year window. Now, you can wait until the end of year 10, but you've got to be very careful. You don't just keep putting it off thinking, oh, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. My tax rates are going to be lower, and wait till year 10 and then end up potentially having a big problem. It's one, because you got so much money. Two, because maybe tax rates are higher at that point than they are today. But you have 10 years. It's not 5. You can take it out slowly, or you can wait until the end of that 10th year and pull it all out.
What mistakes do you see with this, Dave?
The biggest thing is people don't understand the laws changed. It used to be to where you could carry it out throughout your life. I've got clients that are in their 20s that got inherited IRAs from their grandparents. They're going to go until they're 80 or 90. They're just slowly taking the amounts out. So they don't understand. But number 2 is usually people don't stretch it out like they should. They don't take the multiple years they have available. And sometimes there's valid reason for it, but others, and it's usually not on the back end, it's on the front end. Someone gets an inheritance and they're like, hey, I'm taking my $1 million and I'm going to run. I want to get this money into my account. Well, that may or may not be the best thing for you to do. If you are in a bracket where you can take it out over 5 or 6 years, it may be much better for you from a tax side to just stretch it out.
And Dave, when we talk about retirement, we always get into these tax buckets, right? And so what I want to do is pull up one of these about Amy. And I want to have you maybe help dissect this for maybe those who've been on here who don't understand this. But Amy's question is, where are you putting money in lieu of mutual funds? What are some examples of a tax-free bucket?
Yeah, let's talk about this because I think there's some misconceptions here when we look at it from Amy's side. The one thing with the mutual funds, they can be in any bucket. Realize that you could have them in a taxable bucket where you're paying tax on the interest and the earnings every year, the dividends. You could have them in your tax deferred bucket inside of your IRAs, your 401ks, or you could have them in the tax-free. They could be in your Roth account. So the mutual fund in and of itself can go anywhere. And this is one misconception we see quite a bit. People think, especially in the tax-free, I'm not quite sure why, they feel like there's some type of restriction on what you can invest in. So many people have brought this up, whether it's a stock or a mutual fund or self-directed, whatever the case may be. Well, I want to put it in tax-free. I can't invest it, almost like they have to put it in a bank account or something. That's not the case. A mutual fund can go into any of these buckets. So if we look at it from a tax-free side, well, what we're looking at is more the names of those accounts, not the types of investment. So again, you could put it in mutual funds, you could put it in stocks, you could put it into annuities, something else many people don't realize inside of a tax-free bucket. As we look inside of there, you could have those annuities. You could end up with life insurance, but that's where it's coming back to the account names. We want Roth accounts. We want a life insurance that is a permanent policy. We want Roth conversions. We want Roth annuities, these type of things. So Amy, don't get caught up in the investment itself. You want to get really caught up into what's that bucket and what are the accounts like and how much can I get in there? One of the problems, your Roth's going to be limited. You can't just dump a bunch of money in there at your will based upon what you want to have for tax-free income.
Dave, if we look at mutual funds, maybe CDs or what you call certificates of disappointment, Uh, what I guess those are safety nets for people, right? Where they just look at this and say, hey, if it's in the bank, we're good, we're taken care of. But you're saying, wait, hold on. There is some issues by just throwing that money in there and being safe.
Yeah, and when we look at it, I mean, as we look at it here, we've got a mutual fund, not a money market account. So we do have a stock-based account that, or a bond-based account, something that's going to have some growth potentially to it. So I'm not against, if we look at, again, we've still got to diversify out assets. We want diversified income by having tax-free income. We want to have income coming from Social Security that's tax-free, but we also want diversity inside of those assets still. So if we look at it, I'm not against mutual funds, ETFs, if we look at direct stock investment. But again, that's for a portion. What we don't want to do is go out there and just say, look, I'm going to put all my money into mutual funds, and that's going to be my retirement plan. Because once you do that, you've subjected yourself to a lot of unnecessary risk that we're trying to eliminate. And it's going to require you to have multiple streams of income. It's going to require you to have multiple investment buckets, and it's going to require you to do some planning to get there.
And Dave, I like that because as we have this diversification, we really start to grow. And so because we talked about the tax-free bucket, let's jump over and talk about the tax-deferred bucket. And Tina's asking, what if you already have too much in this tax-deferred bucket?
Well, you are in good company. 95% of Americans who have saved for their retirement have too much money in this bucket. It's what you've been told to do. It's what CPAs, including myself, if I go back into the early years of my accounting, this was what we were trained to tell people. And unfortunately, many times it's, even to this day, it's portrayed as a tax deduction. That, oh, you put this in here, and as a CPA, it looks great. Your taxes were going to be $20,000 before we made this contribution. Now they're going to be 10. Well, what's not often talked about is, what does that look like in the back end? What happens when that money comes out and now we've got to pay that tax? If it's at higher rates, all I did is cost you more money. But if you've got too much money in there, what you've got to do is do systematic transitions into the tax-free bucket. And that's going to require some planning, going to require some math, because they're going to need to look at what your current income is outside of any conversions, what your income is expected to be in the future, and then start using math and science to figure out how much you should be moving and how quickly, so you can get where you should be as you get into those retirement years.
And I do want to encourage all those who are joining us live, go ahead and submit your retirement questions. And thank you for being here with us. It's always so great to have you join us every single Wednesday as we do talk about retirement. And like you see here, we're just throwing so many different questions and topics at Dave, because as we go through, we have tons of different questions. I mean, Dave, do you ever find that you get a lot of the exact same questions, but is it always in the same interest? Meaning, do we always talk Medicare or Social Security, or do you find things completely all over the board?
Things are all over the board, and we see new questions too. What's exciting about what we go through when you're talking to this many people, you see new questions that come up that you hadn't even maybe thought about yourself, that allow you to better understand and better learn a concept. But yes, there's a lot of similarity in what people need to know. Everyone's retirement, everyone should have some Social Security. Everyone should have some Medicare inside of the retirement. Everyone should have other assets that they've invested. But what does that look like? As you look at it, we've all got to have clothes. We've all got to, dress ourselves. But what you love orange. I'm not such a fan of orange, so we're going to pick different things to wear every day. And hey, I love the fall. Where we're at that point, and we're going to change some of that throughout our year, depending on the temperature and what's going on outside. But that's the same with our retirement. It's going to look different. We're going to make changes. We're going to have to make adjustments, but it's okay. That's all part of the process.
Wait a minute. You don't like orange? I'm just finding this out now.
Yeah, I know. It's hard for you to believe. Just because I used to wear it when I went deer hunting didn't mean that I was necessarily a fan of it. But yeah, orange, I'm a blue guy. Yeah, in fact, it's been great being here in Tennessee because the Grizzlies and the Titans both blue. And that's color I've liked. It's color I was raised with, high school colors.
Well, you and my wife are the same then on that part. Well, Dave, we're talking about all the things we need in life. So if you're talking about all these different things we can set up for our retirement, let's talk about these life insurance retirement plans, because this is something that a lot of people are still understanding this concept a little bit because it may be new to them. But Elizabeth is asking, how old should you be to consider something like a life insurance retirement plan?
There are two things that I would tell you, Elizabeth. Number one is it's not so much about age as it is insurability. Talk about this all the time. I had a kidney transplant now almost 2 years ago. It's hard to believe that it's been that long. 30th of this month, my kidney donor's coming to visit again. We're getting back together for a reunion. We do that every year. She's going to come spend a couple of weeks. She's my wife's best friend. So very happy to have her back visiting with us. But it's more about that insurability. If you're 20 and you've had major medical issues, you're not going to be insurable. Now, if you're 65 or 67 and you're in good health, life insurance policy may work well for you. So number one, you got to look at that. Now, I will tell you, if you get into your 70s, probably not going to work. The fees of these things are going to get so expensive. Most of you, it's not going to be the right situation. But then the other thing, what we want to look at is the availability of assets. Now, if you've got a 401k out there that you're getting a match and that's the only money you have available for yourself, maybe the life insurance plan isn't right for you yet. But if you're in a situation where you got extra money, even for a child, not a bad idea to get young kids these policies, because they can be used for college, that you could take money out of those during the college years to help them cover their college costs. They could be used maybe to help put a down payment on a house. Depending on the amount of money that goes inside of there, you can use some of that cash value as a bank where they'd pull it out and maybe end up paying it back in. But then you've got the lifetime growth, tax-free growth, tax-free distribution. So the earlier you can get them started, the better off you are. And the insurance is going to be cheaper. Insurance for a 10-year-old is going to be much different than a 70-year-old.
And Dave, these LARPs, this life insurance retirement plan, this is not something that people probably are all familiar with. It's something new. And how do we help them to understand how important this is, or maybe why this is out there compared to the other products?
Yeah, you're exactly right. It is a new concept. And when we talk about it, I think people get pretty excited because they hear what it does. They hear all the benefits of it. They hear that they can get this money tax-free. They can grow it tax-free. They can get money out of that taxable bucket that they've had no other way to move into an environment that could continue to grow tax-free. But with that, they often don't understand, as we talked about before, that all these products are different, and that they need to be able to go to an advisor that understands the way these work and has access to the companies that offer it. I have a policy myself, CR. I bought it years ago, but it's with one of the top whole life carriers. I was trying to get it out there without sharing their name. Don't want to try to badmouth them here on this question and answer segment, but I have one, and the fees on that CR are 2%. 2%. Now let's talk a little bit about that from a percentage side. You may say, oh, you know what? I go to the bank, I pull money out of an ATM, I pay 2%, whatever the case is, or 3% or whatever it works out based upon the money you're taking out. Well, that's a one-time fee. Here, remember, if you pulled out $10,000 and paid 2%, that money's probably still out the next year. Well, you're going to get 2% again. And the next year, you're going to get 2% again on not only the 10 grand, but your interest. So we look at that, and we've got a situation where they're structuring these like mine is, where that's not going to do you any good. My kids are going to inherit that policy. I'm not going to end up ever taking money out of there and paying that cost. So that's where we've got to help people get to the advisors that have the right products, so they structure it correctly, that they don't just go out there and we see it all the time. You see it with various products out there. Someone's trying to get healthy and go online. They see an exercise bike out there that's $50 and they think, man, I just can't wait to go ahead and get that bike and go to work. Well, then they get that thing home and it doesn't work. It's clunky. It makes noise. The wheels don't pedal very well. And so they don't do anything with it, and they put it aside. Well, then someone goes and spends maybe $500, gets a good quality one. They're riding that sucker every day, pedaling around the house, whatever the movie they've got on there, or the little camera, pedaling away, just making things happen. But that's what we've got to look at from a life insurance side. We've got to get people to understand that how they work, and not just think, well, an index policy is an index policy. I can just go buy one from whomever and be able to put it into my retirement. It's going to work for me.
Dave, are you talking about the bike that's in my basement right now?
Yeah, you may have one of those. I know most people do that, or a cheap treadmill. Someone gets a treadmill and it's got a 4-foot tread on it instead of a 6-foot, and you're my size, 6'4", and every time you run on the thing, your feet are falling off the back end. Yeah, most of us have that type of equipment, but we've got to be careful. We're buying the right thing, meaning, hey, we need an piece of exercise equipment, but we're buying the wrong product. And the same thing happens with our retirement.
I totally agree. And I just want to let you know, Dave, we have about 6 more minutes left. And I just want to let everyone know, if you're here joining us live, go ahead and get your questions submitted. We'll go ahead and try to throw them in with the rest of the questions here and get that taken care of for you. Dave, let's get on to the next one we have here. Sorry, I'm at home, so we get all the dogs in the background too, which is always exciting. So if we can get over to Jordan's question, let's see if I can get it on the screen here. What are your thoughts on holding part of your emergency reserves in bonds or other inflation-protected semi-liquid securities?
The biggest thing you've got to look at from this side, Jordan, is you want to make sure you've got them quick access to those. You're not going to end up losing a bunch of money if you exit out of the product. Now, bonds, when we look at what's going on with inflation and the bond rates going up, interest rates going up, you may have some issues. So I'd be very careful. I'm not telling you can't do it, but what we want to do is really keep that money very liquid. And it's going to mean you're not going to get a lot of return on it, but it's okay. It's part of the plan. We want to be able to have money that if we've got to get access to it, we're not going to take a 10, 20% hit. We want to be able to have full balance there. So not saying it can't happen. I just warn you to be very careful. Try to keep it as liquid as possible so that you can get access when you need it.
And Dave, as we're getting through this, I know we're shorter on time here, but what are we looking at for right now to help people to feel secure? Because again, with the market so volatile right now, people are afraid of making pretty much any decision right now. How do we help add that comfort right now?
Well, one of the things that we're doing and that's working very effective for people. In fact, I just got a call from one of the companies we work with just barely talking about what their product's done over the last year. And that's putting these money into index universal life and index annuities. When we look at those, if the market goes down, you're not going to lose money. I mean, the money you have in there is going to stay. Well, if the market goes up, you get the upside. Well, look at what's happened over the last year. We've had a lot of people go out of the market because they're saying, look, this thing's going to crash. I don't want it to crash. So they've got to set in a bank account that's making them nothing. Well, what happens if they put that into an annuity? Well, if in a year from now the market's down, yeah, they're not going to get anything either. But they didn't get anything out of their bank account. And if they were in the market, they lost. But what happens if the market takes off like it has over the last year? Like I said, I just got a call, 18%. That's what this product's up, 18% for the year. Well, they're asking, hey, do you want to lock in right now? Take that off the table, take your 18% and run. Maybe a good opportunity for people to do that. But again, when you can get in an environment where it's like, hey, I'd lose nothing if everything falls apart, but if it goes up, I win. How do you beat that? You can't beat it in the market. You can't beat it with a bank account. So it's something people have really got to look at and get over their problems when they look at life insurance companies inside their retirement. These are based upon reducing risk. As risk advisors, we find that they're the companies out there you're going to have to use if you want to eliminate the risks we talk about in many of our webinars.
Definitely a great point, Dave. And I think that's importance of, again, why we're here to talk about all these different products and make sure we're not here just vetting one particular product, but going over all of them because everybody's retirement is different. And you and I have talked about this several times where your retirement's going to look a lot different from mine. And we need to make sure that people understand that and they don't try to match whatever's happening down the street or whatever their neighbor has, because it's just not going to work for everyone.
No, it definitely isn't. Again, you're going to have the same guidelines. You're going to have the same basics that you're going to need to follow, but you want to design it for yourself. Again, this is an opportunity for you to have a custom plan. And we look at this is an opportunity for you to be yourself, to design things the way you want them. You don't want to be having to worry about trying to create what your neighbor had. You want to be able to do it for yourself.
I totally agree. All right, Dave, let's see. I'm going to try to squeeze one more in here. We're going to pull up Andy's. Andy's asking, can someone who is age 82 create a rollover Roth IRA after required minimum distributions are taken?
Andy, good question. Sounds like you've got a pretty decent understanding too of how the required minimum distributions work. When we look at this, required minimum distributions start at age 72. So obviously Andy's 10 years into the process here, but required minimum distributions, be aware that the distribution itself cannot be rolled into a Roth. So that's something many people misunderstand. So it cannot be. But to answer Andy's question here, the answer is yes. Anything after that, if he's still got money inside of there, that can all be rolled over. There's no age restriction on someone being able to do that. And I will tell you, when we go back, CR, you'd asked the question before, the lady had the large IRA inheritance. You know, what mistakes do people make? The biggest mistake people make is having large IRAs when they die. I mean, this is one of the problems, and especially traditional IRAs, because oftentimes their kids are in much higher tax brackets than they're in at that period of time. So what we want is someone like Andy here saying, look, I'm in my 80s. Let me get this money out. Let me pay the tax at my brackets. Kids can inherit it. They don't have to worry about it at all.
And Dave, I think one of the things we realize as we continually do this, we're not only looking out for our future, our kids, but also for our parents. I noticed yesterday we were doing a webinar together and we had a couple of people that were jumping on saying, I'm in here to learn how to help my parents. And so I take something like Andy right now that's looking at this, and exactly what you brought up is we're leaving so much on the table after we leave. And so a lot of these folks are jumping on saying, okay, how do I help my parents? Because they haven't taken those necessary steps, and they're close, and we need to be able to help. And I love the point you made.
Yeah, it can be a very awkward conversation, and obviously you've got to approach it with the right spirit and the right attitude of it. But parents and children need to talk more about these issues, especially as parents start to age, going through processes. Make sure that they're set, that they're okay, that they met with someone that understands what needs to be done. Because I don't know of anyone in 30 years of working with people, thousands of people, I don't know anyone that's out there saying, "Man, I sure hope I can give everything to the IRS and my kids end up with nothing." I hope that happens. But if they don't talk and they don't plan and they don't understand, that's exactly what's going to go on. Uncle Sam's going to get their inheritance and their kids going to be walking away saying, "Man, I sure wish my mom and dad would have structured that a little bit different."
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because that's the one thing we talk about, even when we dive into Social Security, is making sure that spouses are talking, and especially in our families, we're talking to our kids and parents exactly like you said, because as we do this, we become stronger. We're not giving everything to the IRS. So, Dave, thank you so much.
Yeah, and there's one other thing I can promise you. You know what? If you end up giving your inheritance to the IRS, they're not putting flowers on your grave. So don't expect them to be coming out there every year on Memorial Day, putting flowers out there on your grave and telling you thank you for what you've done. Kids are going to do that. So give your kids the money, make sure the IRS gets their share, whatever that legal share is, but try to get it down as low as you possibly can.
And Dave, we're out of time, so I want to thank you again, and I want to thank all those who have been with us live. And if you've been here on replay, thank you again. Also, it's been so great. We love doing this show. So many wonderful questions that come in, and we appreciate your support. And as we do this, Dave, I do want to end. You always have some great advice as we leave the show, so I need something from you on this beautiful hump day.
Yeah. So what I'm going to tell you is the best kindness is using your own strength rather than focusing on someone else's weakness. So if you want to be kind to someone, help them, reach them up, use your skills, build them up. Don't focus on their weaknesses, but be there to be the strength for them. So take that with your life today. Want to help you all accomplish your goals. That's what we're trying to do here. I've got to strengthen retirement planning. Don't want to focus on whatever weaknesses you've had. Let me give you what I've got to offer to build you up.
And remember, we're here every single Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time. So if you were here and you didn't have the courage to ask your question, jump on next time or send us an email. You can go on to the retirementriskadvisors.com and click on contact, and you can send your question there. You can even send it to me. I'm cr@retirementriskadvisors.com. That way I can get your question added beforehand if you didn't want to do it ahead. And thanks for letting my Chihuahua barker head off while we were here during the show. That's the beauty of when we work at home and all those different things. But again, the best part about any of this, Dave, and I'm going to leave it on my end too, is just make sure you take action. If it's either starting that conversation at home, starting it with your parents, starting with your kids, just make sure you start, because that's the whole reason behind all of this. Is if we just listen and say, gosh, that was great, but I don't have any action to take on it, we've kind of left ourselves short.
Yeah, no, we definitely have. And again, we're here to help. Take advantage of our help and what we offer. A lot of great resources to get you through those retirement years.
And all those can be found at the retirementriskadvisors.com. Great webinars, podcast today. We didn't even get into your new podcast you have. So you can make sure Retirement Risk Show, look up that on any place you enjoy podcast. A brand new format. We just finished our season 1 and 2 of a whole different show. We'd love to see your feedback on there as well, because it's an amazing podcast.
Yeah, it's a whole different take, something that I've never done in this environment. So would love to see what you think. Hopefully it keeps you engaged, keeps you excited about your retirement, and gives you some good feedback on things that you can look at and things you can consider.
And like I said, you can find all the details at retirementriskadvisors.com. And if there's anything else we can help you with, go ahead and submit anything on that contact form. We'll be happy to take care of that. And again, Dave, thanks for your time. And I'm sure we'll see you again next Wednesday.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe I'll have my fall outfit on. So look for that. Maybe we'll change things up a little bit.
We'll have you decked in blue. All right, everyone. We'll see you guys again next week.